Let's be honest, if there's one move we've pretty much all wanted to learn at one point, it's the muscle up. It looks absolutely awesome, and for most newcomers might actually look doable, especially if you've got some pulling strength from before. You might be familiar with the following scenario: you step up to the pulling bar, grab a hold of it and pull as hard as you can, only to all of a sudden realise that you're utterly unable to get to the top. Don't worry, most people are. The muscle up is one of those skills that seems just within reach, yet so far away. But I'm here to tell you that it might be way closer than you think. From my own experience with the muscle up, as well as having coached a few people and seen numerous examples, both online and in person, there seems to be one single thing that makes or breaks the muscle up. One single thing which makes the difference between whether you can or cannot muscle up. So let's get into that one thing. So first things first, in order to get the muscle up, there obviously are some requirements when it comes to like base strength. You've probably heard people talk about if you're able to do 10 pull-ups, you can do a muscle up, but I don't really think that's the case. You might be able to do 15, 20 pull-ups without doing a muscle up. It comes down to technique, and in a similar fashion you can get away with doing less than 10 pull-ups and still do the muscle up if you have adequate technique. But obviously there's a base requirement when it comes to strength. So I'd say if you're able to do a couple of clean pull-ups, a couple of clean dips, you should be all good to go. You should be able to muscle up, at least if you have the right technique under your belt. Now the muscle up can be divided into 3 parts: the pulling phase, the transition phase, and then the dip phase. The number one pitfall, the biggest problem there seems to be with the muscle up, and that there was for me personally, was to understand the body movement required and the pathway you actually take during a bar muscle up. The key lies in understanding that with a bar muscle up, you want to get not just high up on the bar, you don't just want to pull hard, but you also want to get around the bar into the dip position. Notice what I said, around the bar. With a ring muscle up, on the other hand, it doesn't really matter too much how high you go or sort of the body movement in the sense. Obviously there are more effective ways of doing it and, easier ways for your wrists and for your grip and everything, but in a ring muscle up you don't really have the issue of something blocking your pathway. You have the rings on your side, pull them down in, and then you can go straight up. However, for the bar muscle up, the bar itself is blocking your pathway, so the only way up is around. So that seems quite easy, right? Well, in principle it is. It's quite simple, but for me it wasn't just enough to have that idea of, okay, you need to go around it. You need to actually look into, okay, what mechanics, what body movements do you want to do in order to achieve that? Because at the start, especially with something like the muscle up, it's not the easiest thing to have lots of intuition about and how your body's supposed to move and when you're supposed to initiate the pull and how you're supposed to do the different stages. So for this part of the video, I'm going to cover what you want to do, and then I'll follow that up with common errors and common mistakes I see people do and what you should do instead. So let's go. Now, to begin with, you want to create a small swing. It doesn't have to be massive. In fact, if it's really big, this might just throw you off completely from the movement because you'll get to the end range and try to shoot for the muscle up and it'll just, throw you too far away from the bar. You won't be able to actually get around it and get back on it. But you want to have a bit of a swing. As you get better at muscle ups, you don't need as much of a swing, and there are ways of progressing to doing slow muscle ups and variations which don't really require any momentum in the start at all. But to begin with, in order to unlock the muscle up, I do think this is a good step to throw in there. Now, next point is that you want to have your arms straight. Not like this, not with a slight bend or anything. Keep your arms fully straight. This is going to make it a lot easier because you won't have to initiate the muscle up from an already strained position. Like holding like this is actually quite difficult. If you hold like this, there's not much power to give to actually go further up. Whereas like this, you can almost lean into your arms or be fully extended and then just explode up as high as possible. Next point, last but not least, arguably the most important point here, is that you want to get the timing of the pull right. You want to initiate the pull at the correct time. So when you're rocking backwards and forwards in this pendulum motion, you don't want to initiate the pull when you're moving in towards the end point, and you don't want to initiate it when you're moving away from the end point. What you want to do is that as you reach that end point, the moment you're there, the moment your speed goes to 0 for a split second, that's when you want to initiate it. So by pulling at the very end point of this sort of pendulum motion you've created with your swinging, by pulling at that very point, you'll be slightly in front of the bar, And so the pull will put you in a pathway that is more aligned with getting you around the bar instead of just straight up into it. Think about the Fibonacci spiral. This is sort of what I see, or like what I visualize in my head, that you want to move not just straight up and down, but this is why you do that little swing. You get yourself in front of the bar, straight arms, and from there you can snap like a spring and get into this sort of spiraling movement to get to the dip position. So if you sort of look at all of these components together, you start to create a bit of a swing in order to have more energy to use, more than you could generate from just a high pull-up yourself. You have your arms straight so that you can use as much of that energy as possible in the movement, and you want to snap and like a spring explode up once you're at the end range, both because you won't have any sort of pendulum movement that will try to throw you off where you actually want to go, but also because at that end range, your center of mass is slightly in front of the bar. And so when you explode, you won't just go straight up, you'll actually go in a pathway that's more in tune with what you need in order to get around the bar instead of just straight up into it, that you do as you do with a high pull-up, for example. So all of these components put together and you get the result of a muscle up, or at least the most difficult part for most people, seemingly, about the muscle up. The pull and transition phase sorted. At this point, it just comes down to sheer repetition and to practice. Possibly with a band, it might be a good idea actually, in order to get a feel for what type of motion you actually want to have with the muscle up. At the end of the day, it comes down to having good technique and to be able to execute that well and to utilize your energy, utilize your strength in an effective manner. And this way you go up and around the bar instead of just straight into it. Okay, so now I'm going to cover the two biggest mistakes I see with people trying to perform the muscle up, what you should do instead, and well, what you should not do if you want to get the muscle up right. So error number one simply comes down to wrong timing. As I spoke about earlier, when you have this pendulum motion and you're swinging back and forwards, you want to initiate the pull at the very end point of that pendulum motion, where you're as far in front of the bar as you get. And the reason for this is that if you do anything else, the other movements involved will just throw you off the pathway you actually want to take to get to the top of the bar. If you start pulling before you get to the end point, you'll be sort of fighting yourself in that your body's actually going this way. If the bar's right above me and I'm hyperextending here before I'm going for the muscle up, if I'm starting to pull before I get to that end point, I'll have to fight my own body, my own momentum going this way when I want to go this way. And if you initiate the pull when you're going backwards away from that end point, even though your momentum is in a more similar direction, it's still at a way different angle than what you actually want to do in order to get higher up and, well, around the bar. So yeah, this is not to be undervalued. The timing of when you initiate the pull is very important. And if you get this right, well, it greatly increases the chances of you being able to do a muscle up. Now, mistake number two, I've touched a bit on this, but this is not using straight arms. I can't believe how many times I've seen this, and it might intuitively make sense to have some type of bend in your arms because you're already higher up, right? And I see this in climbing as well. Like if people want to do like a massive move, or there is a massive move they have to make, then people often try to like almost like a half pull up and then reach for it. But what often seems to be a better case, especially if it's like almost a dyno move and you have to go really far, is to, instead of holding yourself up and then trying to reach more, you don't really have much to go for. You're already using energy by the second to keep yourself in that position, and so you're draining yourself for when you want to reach the next hold, right? But that's the main problem with keeping your arms in any position that's not really straight here, is that you're wasting energy that could be used for going explosive. And not only that, but you're in a position where it's very difficult to be explosive from. From here, you need a lot of energy in order to get higher up. Whereas if you're down here and especially utilizing a bit of a bounce from straight arms to even shoulders up towards your ears, right? Scapula less and more activated, to just bounce up, like that's a lot easier than having to do it from this type of position. The thing I recommend is just to do it with straight arms. Similar in climbing, even if you have to reach a hold and you're sort of like in this position, if I need to go really high up to the next one, what I tend to do is just drop my arms, like drop into drop into a resting position for a split second and almost like bounce off it, because then I have some leeway to explode up rather than having to hold myself there and try to, because it doesn't really work. Same for the muscle up. Instead of locking off your arms and sort of, oh, I'm closer to, I'm higher up. No. Don't worry about that. Keep your arms straight, and when you explode, you'll have more energy for that, and you'll be in a better position, just hyperextend and then bounce off, sort of like a spring. So yeah, I can't believe how many people I've seen doing this, and it might make sense, like, I get it, like, intuitively speaking, it's sort of like, okay, I'm closer up to the bar, but trust me, it does you no favours, so keep those arms straight. And for mistake number 1, just get the timing right. And these 2 are the biggest mistakes I observe when I see people trying muscle ups here and there. So if you manage to stay clear of these, and especially if you manage to get the earlier points sort of sorted in your mind and to actually perform them on the bar, I guarantee you'll be way closer than you currently are to achieving the muscle up. Especially if you have some base level of strength, it's just a matter of time unless you've already got the muscle up and just got it like that. Because this is the most important part of the muscle up, to get the timing right and to utilize your energy effectively so that you can be dynamic when you have to be dynamic, to get not just up towards the bar but actually around it, to that dip position, ready to lock off to victory. So for the muscle up, technique is king. However, the higher you can pull up and the more explosive you are, the easier it's going to get. So if you're interested in learning how to get higher pull-ups, consider watching this video somewhere on screen right now. And without further ado, thanks for watching, and as always, remember to keep on training, train what you love, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.